You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. There are a lot of different skills that we need to bring to the table if we're going to build a successful life and business. One of those skills is intuition, and not a lot of people understand how that works. Very few people tap into it, but today's guest is going to help us learn how to be better in intuition in our business and in our life. I'm speaking with Katy Bray, who is an intuitive entrepreneur whose direct and loving approach has been transformational for her clients in growing into the next levels of their intuition and business. Katy is a Vedic counselor and dancer. She is also an author, speaker, retreat facilitator, and a catalyst for all who seek her counsel. Katy, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
The pleasure is mine. Your website is livewiththelightson.com. What is the background for that? That's an interesting name. How did you come up with that?
So I came up with it actually about 13 years ago with my first business coach who was helping me around branding. And I knew with total certainty that my big work in the world was to help people live a more conscious way of life, to live more awake. So I kept just feeling so much light around it. And I knew that I was attracting a lot of leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs who were about doing good things in the world. And so the idea of them being a light made a lot of sense. And so it just sort of clicked and it was like, yes, that's it. Live with the lights on. That's the ideal.
Very awesome. And that is, that really exemplifies who you are and what you are all about. You are an intuitive entrepreneur. You're also a Vedic counselor and dancer. Tell us what Vedic counseling is.
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, I get it a lot. It's not the most common term. I'm sure many people are familiar with the idea of Chinese medicine. Well, this is the Indian version of Chinese medicine. And while I am certainly not a doctor, I don't use the word medicine as if I'm an MD of any kind. But through this medical system, I look at people when I work with them and I look at their mind, body, spirit. I look at, potentially what foods are creating imbalances somewhere within their mind, body, or spirit. I help support them in behaviors and breathing techniques and practices that will really bring them into an inner space of harmony where listening to their intuition is possible. And what I love about it is it's really a very powerful way to pull people's innate wisdom out of them, because I really believe that we are all filled with the information and wisdom that we really need to take us on our next steps in our journey. It's just sort of quieting out all the noise that wants to drown that out. And so that's one of the big things that I like to do. And I use Vedic counseling as one of my tools to do that.
Very interesting, because one thing is connected to another thing. Everything is connected. Typically, I'm sure in your experience, when someone's got an issue in their mind, there's usually something manifesting in their body, and there's a spiritual component to everything.
Always.
So that's very interesting. And we all have stories of how we came to be where we are. What is your story? What got you interested in these things?
Yeah, so it's funny when people ask me, how did you get into this? I say it really got into me. I knew from a very, very early age, like I was 3 years old when I had my first memory of a precognition. So I've always had sort of extra spidey senses that I've been aware of. My perception around being able to understand people and my intuitive skills, I was born with, and they never really went away. And so, still I had to learn the hard way, as I think we often are called to in our human experience. Yeah. And to really keep a long story short, I can tell you that in towards the end of my high school years, I was in the midst of 4 significant traumas within about a year and a half time period. And so what they were was I had been sexually assaulted in a foreign country. Then a lifelong friend of mine was killed. And then both of my grandparents, who I was really close to, passed away within 4 months of each other. And so, I mean, you can imagine just somebody who has, the best inner skills developed, inner strength and all of that would be hard for them. But for me, I didn't have a strong inner world. I didn't have a lot of confidence. I didn't have a lot of coping mechanisms, if you will. So that actually ultimately landed me dropping out of college. I had gotten into my dream college, and then I dropped out after the first year. And then I lied in bed. I had agoraphobia, which means I was afraid to leave the house. For 2 years, I lied in bed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was over-medicating with alcohol and food. I was put on a lot of different head meds. I was even institutionalized because I was actually drinking so much, but not telling anyone, and dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder that way. It was really kind of an ugly situation. But when I was 20 years old, I just had this really powerful, like just divine moment where I heard this voice say, you got yourself into this, you can get yourself out of this. And it really felt like a command. And so it was actually the next day that I went and I told my mother what was going on. I got myself to an AA meeting, and that actually started my journey in all of this. That was 21 years ago. And, along the way, I saw a therapist for a long time to work through the PTSD. I, started seeing my own intuitive healer after I had done a lot of sort of the behavioral mind work that I was doing in therapy, the emotional stuff. I just knew that there was more to me. And so, even though I didn't always honor my intuition, I think overall I honored it enough that I just kept getting the call that I needed to do more work on myself. And with each step of me doing more work on myself, I felt that much more compelled to share what I'd learned and work with others. And so it was 13 years ago that through a bunch of serendipitous events and synchronicities, I ended up in my first Ayurvedic class, and I knew I was home. And so I've been going ever since.
Wow. What a powerful story of coming back from the edge. And any one of those traumas would have been enough to completely sideline you. But you came back, and now you have devoted your life and your professional career to helping others. Intuition is kind of elusive for people. You seem to have seem to have grasped it, and that was a big factor in following your heart and literally getting yourself out of what you had gotten yourself into. What is intuition?
So intuition for me, I believe it's a higher wisdom that we're all born with. I believe that, whether, someone calls the greater forces God, spirit, some people just feel like it's a scientific force. I mean, whatever that is, whatever makes the roses bloom and, the earth spin, whatever that is for you, I feel like is innately in all of us. And so just to put a little more meat on that, intuition for me is understanding that I am a vessel for that force, and that force speaks to me through my body and through my senses. And I get very real information and insights because I believe so wholly and deeply, and because I work to keep those lines of communication consistently open. So intuition is really about hearing or being able to see or hear or focus beyond what the mind wants to tell us. I think just human beings ourselves just innately have that monkey mind. It can be very hard to shut the thoughts off in our head, but intuition is a constant force that is consistently giving us feedback about us, about our relationships, about our lives, about our businesses. And it's really telling us which directions to go. And in my experience and in my years of working with people now, I stopped counting how many people I'd worked with after I got to 12,000 people. So I don't say that as an impressive number. I say that to highlight that something I've been able to see across the board with so many walks of life is that we all have intuition. I've seen a lot of patterns. I see how intuition comes through people in different ways. But it's this inner wisdom that really is our inner compass and our inner GPS system that is going to show us where our next best steps are, no matter what area of life we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Very useful to be able to find out what that is and how to leverage that. You do that.
Yes.
You do that with life, and you do it with business as an intuitive entrepreneur. Tell us more about how you work with people and who is your ideal prospect.
Yeah. So I do tend to work more with leader types. So definitely just general entrepreneurs not general, but just entrepreneurs in general, anyone who's really leading something. I started attracting, those groups early on. Could be because I was always at networking events and, that's just sort of how it worked. But I definitely gravitate towards people who are leading something, who are at the head of something. It could be the lead of a community. It's sometimes, some of my clients are even couples who are just head of household and they're looking to navigate life and kids. But there's this idea of I'm leading something and people are looking to me to better something for them. Or, there's this endeavor, the entrepreneur, there's that, but there's this endeavor that I need to put into the world. I'm here to birth something into the world. And the reason why I love working with these kinds of people is that's me. I relate, I feel like my work is really important in the world and I understand the things that I have come up against as an entrepreneur. And it's no different than what the majority of entrepreneurs, go through. And I think, it's a real gift for people to have discernment and intuition when it comes to making business decisions, small or big. If you're questioning a contractor to hire because you're designing a new website, or you have a team of people and you're not sure who to hire, things like that, or, a lot of entrepreneurs get really distracted about, oh my gosh, if I just, give this coach, this amount of money, then they say I'm going to have this result by this amount of time. And it's big and it's grandiose and it's huge. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people waste a lot of time and money and energy and then doubt themselves for making choices like that really, if they had been tuned into their intuition, they would have understood that there are certain people who are selling shortcuts and there's no such thing. But when we have our intuition intact, which is what I help people do, you save on those really costly mistakes. And I say costly, yes, with time, money and energy, but I think they're more costly because of the way that they can beat up a person's self-esteem and start to erode our self-trust. And to me, that is one of the biggest problems any entrepreneur could battle with. If we don't trust ourselves and, our confidence takes a hit, we're going to have bigger problems. And I just don't like seeing that.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of something, I think Tony Robbins, a story he told a few years ago in his book about a professional boxer who said, I'm in trouble. I had a negative thought in the ring today.
Oh,
and it's like, oh, so you can have one negative thought, and what's the big deal? And the boxer said, you don't understand. One negative thought in the ring can get me killed.
That's right. That's right.
So maybe, maybe the consequences are not that dire for you and for me, but if we have a negative thought, if we allow our self-confidence to be shaken, then it can definitely have a negative impact on our business. So when you're working with people to help them develop their intuition and to tap into this innate wisdom and knowledge, what is the biggest hindrance? Why is it so hard for us to tap into this and to trust this? What's the obstacle?
There's a lot of obstacles, actually. One is, it is easy to see all the shiny objects around, all the different possible, courses or seminars or this or that we can go to. And ultimately, if that's what we keep chasing, we spin our wheels. And I've seen people do that for years, where they sort of stay stuck in the excitement of the idea of their business, but they don't actually get their feet on the ground and start doing the work. Now, mind you, I'm a big fan of seminars and workshops and things like that, like a really big fan. I see it become an addiction for people and actually a way to avoid doing their work. And so that's more what I'm calling attention to. That can be a really huge distraction. The other thing is, and this was a big one that I ran into multiple times until I realized that I needed to really practice what I teach on a deeper level. There were things that I saw other entrepreneurs doing. In fact, at one point, one of my business coaches was like, this is the way to do it. This is what you have to do. And everything in me was like, this doesn't feel right for me. This does not feel like it's what I'm supposed to do. And I think a lot of people will come up against things like that, where it is important to know, what certain business techniques and tools and ways to market or generate clients or, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, if it's not resonating with you, your intuition might be telling you that is not the best way for you to go, that it's time to get creative and look at other possibilities. And I see people give into pressure because they're like, well, gosh, maybe they know better than I do. They're the expert, that's why I'm paying them, or, whatever the story is. And to a certain degree, I think that's true. I'm a big fan of coaches and mentors and people who are where we want to be. I think there's something incredibly valuable about that. But I think any good coach or mentor at the end of the day is going to support you in reflecting back what your highest calling is, what your highest next step is, and really honor what it is that you feel to be true for you. And I honestly find that to be super hard work, to not do what everybody else is doing, but to really go, no, I really feel this and I'm going to trust myself. That's a big one that I see. And
that really taps into this rebelpreneur mindset. We're going to break the rules and build the business we need to live the life that we want. And that's not necessarily going to look like somebody else's life, someone else's business, someone else's strategy. And so what you're saying is really, really important for business people, rebelpreneurs, solopreneurs, that we not get into this trap of outsourcing our intuition, outsourcing who we are, trying to be an imitation of somebody else when that's not going to give us the business we need or the life that we want. And that is really the heart of what being a rebelpreneur is all about, breaking the rules in a positive way, not doing anything illegal or immoral. Of course. But to break the pattern, to break the mold. And that's really where entrepreneurship comes into being. It's a creative act to do something that no one else has done. And until somebody famous did it, it hadn't been done. And, right. So why can't we be the first ones to build the business, build the life that we want in the way that we want? So It seems to me that intuition is really critical for doing that.
Yes.
Because you can't just go and, if we're saying you can't just imitate someone else's idea of success, then building and trusting and having confidence in our own intuition is really, really critical if we're going to build a business. So how can we do that? Are there a couple of steps or 3 steps that would be helpful to begin to move in the right direction and trust and build our intuition a little bit better?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one that is, I think if you do nothing else, this first one's really important. Actually doing breath work, some kind of breathing technique. If anyone listening, goes to a yoga class, they know that even that kind of breath work, there's alternate nostril breathing. There's one that the Navy has called box breathing. You can, YouTube all day different breathing techniques and find great ones. But the breath is really the bridge between our mind, body, spirit. And when we spend 30 seconds a day, a few times a day, I always give TMI, but every time I go into the restroom, because I know I'm going to go into the restroom at least a few times a day, I spend 30 seconds doing some kind of breathing technique, even if it's just slowing down your breath and getting present. That's a huge one, because if we're so stuck in our heads and we're everywhere else, we're so busy projecting into the future or somewhere back in the past that we're anywhere but here. And right here now is where our intuition speaks to us. Which leads me to my second one is really becoming fully embodied. And what I mean by that, like you did say at the beginning, I'm a dance teacher. I do teach dance. After being so separated from my body, I was separated from my intuition at that point in my life. And movement actually helped bring me back into my body. And so for some people, that's going to the gym and lifting weights. For some people, that's walking. Some people, that's running. But anything that actually takes you out of your mind and brings your level of awareness into the whole of your body, it's another way to bring yourself present, which again is where your intuition speaks to you. So if you actually put your breath and some kind of embodiment practice where you bring yourself into presence, those 2 things are very powerful together. The third one, if you want to build off of that, is just start asking yourself questions like, is this the direction I go? Or what would it look like if I go in that direction? And be in your body, do some breathing, do an embodiment practice, and then ask yourself questions. And then just start to feel them in your body. How do they resonate? I can almost guarantee you that you will have different, very subtle, but very clear sensations about what feels open, what feels closed, what feels expansive, what feels contracted, light, heavy. Those are your body and your energy system giving you very valid feedback.
That is some powerful, powerful stuff that you just laid on us there, Katy. And, if someone is listening and they say, well, I don't know if I can really get into all of this woo-woo stuff. Let me say this to you. Have you ever had an idea or thought about something in your business, for example, a new product, a new service, a new way to reach customers, a new marketing idea or something, and that very thought and imagining carrying that out and the success that you would have kept you awake at night with excitement? That is exactly what Katy is talking about.
Yes.
It's about paying attention to the feedback that these thoughts and these questions are generating in your body. If it keeps you awake at night from worry and stress, then that's negative feedback. If it keeps you awake because you're too excited to sleep and you've got to get up and start working on it, that's powerful, positive feedback. So we don't have to get crazy with this. This is very practical. And I would imagine most of our listeners have experienced some form of this. And what you're saying, Katy, is that we need to pay attention to that, develop that, and learn to trust that and lead with that.
Exactly.
How can our listeners get in touch with you to find out more about what you do and what you offer to help facilitate this?
Yeah, so my website, like you said before, is livewiththelightson.com. It's all spelled out. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find. I have some books on Amazon with under my name, Katy Bray. So I'm pretty easy to find. I'm out there.
You're out there, and your website is very memorable. It's livewiththelightson.com, and we'll have that link posted on the Rebelpreneur site as well. Katy, this has really been enlightening, and you have really, I think, demystified this whole process so that it is accessible to ordinary people without going way off into outer space. It's something that we have already experienced, and maybe we didn't know how to describe it or what to do with it. But now I think with your help, it is achievable and it's reachable. So I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom. But I got to ask, any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with?
Honestly, I think what you just said is, I do think we're moving into a time in the world where our intuition is going to be that much more important, and learning how to bring it in and use it in very grounded, practical ways is really where it's at. And there's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad way to do it. Just start playing with your intuition and hold that intention and just learn to start playing with it and trust it.
Excellent. I've been speaking with Katy Bray. She is an intuitive entrepreneur whose direct and loving approach has been transformational for over 12,000 clients, helping them to grow into the next levels of their intuition and business. You can connect with Katy at livewiththelightson.com. Katy, thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.